And in the feature match area right now, we have two players very much in top 8 contention. We have Gabriel Nassif. Now, Gabe is on 9-3 for the record here, which is a little more precarious than his opponent, Gregor's Kowalski, who is 10-2. So things looking quite good here for Gregor's with a victory. Nassif needs to keep on winning here over these last couple of rounds to try to secure that top 8 seat. So let's get into the action here, Cedric. The matchup is similar decks, though, with a little bit of a twist on their finisher.
Yeah, what we're seeing here, most importantly, and you see it kind of in the naming here, well, they're both Jund decks, so we know that they're black, red, and green. But one of these decks is leaning very heavily on Bolsa Citadel, and if you've been paying attention to Historic over the past couple of weeks, I'm thinking of Oliver, too, who was a player who was really trying to push Bolsa Citadel as hard as you could push it with regards to ramping to it and resolving it. Players have stepped away from that some. Grafdigger's Cage was causing quite a few problems, but Kowalski here said, you know what? I don't think people are going to play Cage, and I think I can resolve my Bolsa Citadel, and if I do, I'm going to win. Now, with only one land and one Gilded Goose this game, looking a little bit more difficult than I think he'd like, but that's kind of the plan of this deck.
Yeah, so we'll see if which game plan's end game reigns supreme, but as often is the case, the middle ground matters too, right? It's not just about how you actually plan on finishing the game, because this Jund deck has many ways, little engines, interactions, and combos that you can do that can win you the game quite easily on their own without any type of 5 or 6 mana finisher.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So we'll see which one of them can get it set up. But as you mentioned, Cedric, for Gregor's here, this is rough. Just having Gilded Goose into Gilded Goose. So far, only the one land on the battlefield, while Nassif kind of curves out here, is rough. We see Witch's Oven plus Cauldron Familiar, and now a Midnight Reaper on the battlefield as well. And if you're sitting in Nassif's seat, you are thinking, just miss this next land drop, and it's going to be impossible is a big word, but really difficult to come back from that point. Interestingly, if you look down at Nassif's hand, he also has a Collected Company, but no 4th land to cast it just yet.
Yep, and now if you're in Nassif, you're in a good spot insofar as this is one of those times where drawing a land or a spell is a good thing, and that's basically what your deck is. If you draw a land, you can play Company. If you draw a spell that's not Company, you can probably cast it. So it's an enviable position to be in right now if you're Gabriel Nassif.
So Kowalski says, okay, I drew this Llanowar Elves. I'm going to play it, but I've got to do something else, and that means using both Gilded Geese to eat up both of the foods and turning them into mana to cast a Priest of the Forgotten Gods, a worthy place to put the mana. But now Kowalski is once again down on mana. That 3 mana bump was a 1-turn only thing, and now it's leaning on Llanowar Elves as well as the Stomping Ground for the only sources of mana.
Yeah, you can get a little creative with Priest here insofar as sacrificing those Gilded Geese to get yourself 2 black mana in combination with the Llanowar Elves and the Stomping Ground. That'll give you 4 up to, of course, Collected Company or some combination of other cards that are in Kowalski's hand right now. But, that's going to be a turn that he's going to have to think about, because right now trouble is a-brewing. Yeah, Mayhem Devil is here, and I don't know, you and me, I guess we just get to cover Mayhem Devil a lot, because anytime it shows up, it's destroying a battlefield.
Yes, every single time, and that is exactly what's going to happen here too, Cedric. This Mayhem Devil actually better than casting Collected Company on this particular board because of this interaction. There's 2 food and 2 Cauldron Familiar plus a Witch's Oven, and in that in conjunction with the Devil means a lot of damage gets to get thrown around. Certainly the Llanowar Elves will be off the battlefield, and then Nassif can even pick another creature to kill as well.
Yeah, this is looking really strong for Nassif right now. Like, I envy his position greatly. I'm not a Mayhem Devil player myself, but if I were, I'd be feeling pretty good about how this game's going.
Yeah, things looking good for Nassif. That was really the key there, was being able to get down a Mayhem Devil on this board, because Kowalski had a bit of a house of cards going, right? I mean, he did get a Priest with a couple of mana sources, and as you said, even the Priest is a mana source, like maybe somehow, and get lucky off of a Company. But now you see Nassif kind of sneak up and just flick that bottom card of the house of cards, and it is crumbling now as the Llanowar Elves is gone and the Priest of the Forgotten Gods, leaving just 2 Gilded Geese in a Stomping Ground and no food. So the Geese are just O2s from this point. Another missed land drop here for Kowalski basically is going to seal the deal for game number 1.
Yeah, this should almost certainly lock this game up now. This is Kowalski took a mulligan, kept, I don't even want to say it's a questionable hand. I think it's a reasonable keep. And it just didn't pan out. And sometimes that happens, obviously. There was a high ceiling for this to pan out with regards to Woe Strider and Collected Company. That didn't work out. Nassif's got his engine online. And it won't take much for Kowalski to, I would normally say right-click concede, but he'll press escape and then concede.
That's right. That's right. Do you think he's a press escape conceder or a go hit the little gear in the upper right and then concede? It's a style choice.
That's a good question because I didn't even know about the gear option.
Yeah.
So I just learned something today.
Yeah. If you want to just one hand concede, that's your play. Just hit the gear up there and you can just scoop him right up.
Fair enough.
But I like your escape concede is the more efficient play.
How do you feel about option 3, which is play it out?
In this case, I normally like option number 3 actually. And by the way, that's not like option on the keyboard in the 3 key, right? You didn't mean that. Like I don't have to hit that to play it out. I can just play. Okay.
You can just play it out.
Normally I do actually like to because a lot of times it just takes one more turn, right? Like you could just see the card and then you just scoop then. So it's like 10 or 20 seconds or something. Sure. If it is going to be prolonged and you know that you're in a position that bad, I do not like playing it out. 2 reasons. 1, your clock does matter or can. This is a matchup that can get very complicated where both players have the ability to kill each other's creatures pretty consistently. So it's something to consider. And also just quality of life, right? Like it's not fun to sit there knowing that you're going to lose. It's better to just move on and focus your attention on the next game, I think.
Just knowing that all your stuff's going to get killed, you don't like that?
That's do not enjoy. Oh, okay. Do not enjoy. Now, if I did think that there was like, say, 2 cards back to back that I could draw that could give me a chance to come back, I would just do that because that probably takes like a minute. Like you really don't need to spend that much time doing that. And once one of the first card you see isn't one of those, you can say, okay, we're done here.
It's time to pack it up and move it on, as it were.
Sideboarding is going to be interesting here, Cedric, because as we mentioned, these are both Jund sacrifice decks, but they do have a different top end and they do have different choices within the context of the deck, as you might imagine. And you see Nassif here kind of agonizing over what he should do. He's pulled 6 cards into his main deck and now is deciding kind of in reverse here, what do I want to take back out? What do I want this configuration to look like? And of course, he's going to be consulting the deck list of his opponent, Grzegorz Kowalski, to try to match everything up as well.
Yeah, game 1 was an easy one there for Nassif, and now we're getting kind of into the nitty-gritty about what exactly do I want to do? How do I want to configure things for this second game? I'd love to get this one over with, and ideally move myself on to 10-3 and one step closer to making another top 8, which you and I know his resume is certainly full of. Now, it's going to take a little bit of work because, win this round and almost certainly win next round, but one step at a time, one game at a time. This first game is done, and let's make sure we get it right for the second game. And one thing you and I also know is that Nassif, well, he likes to take his time.
He does indeed. And that's it's always good for us commentators just to let the people at home know that, if you wanted a sandwich, this would be a fine time to go make one. But as it turns out, game number 1 went very quickly. And Nassif is kind of hoping it goes exactly the same because, as you mentioned, that was not hard mode for Nassif. He really just was able to just sort of cast his spells, do the thing they do, and win the game. And now he says, okay, well, it's probably not going to be that easy the rest of the way. The one lander for Grzegorz Kowalski just not turning out for him there.
Yeah, no, not at all for Kowalski. But we'll be on the play this game. Again, it was a hand that had a high ceiling. He had to take a mulligan. And this hand is kind of more of the same. I mean, he does have a turn 2 play, but this is one of those instances, right, where it's just like, if I just draw my 3rd land, Woe Strider will get me almost certainly to land number 4. Blood Crypt means that the 3rd land is here, and we should have ourselves a game of Magic.
All right, a couple of Cauldron Familiars here to kick things off for Nassif. Nothing else, though, at least for the moment. You see Klothys, God of Destiny, in hand there for Kowalski. That could be interesting.
That's a card to like. It's not the optimal turn 3 play simply because there's a Woe Strider in hand, and I imagine we're probably going to see Kowalski sacrifice that Go token to try to find land number 4 for Collected Company number 1. And if that shows up, obviously the dynamic of the game is going to change in a very meaningful way, assuming that Collected Company does cooperate. So naturally, I like Kowalski's draw this game significantly more than the last game, but that doesn't really take much.
Boy, this hand looks nice. We saw earlier Luis played against Gabriel Nassif, and it did in many ways come down to which player was able to resolve the most copies of Collected Company, just brute force. Luis played 3 of them in one game, and Nassif played 1. And even though there were times where it looked like Luis was a little bit behind, ultimately the raw power of Collected Company over and over and over was enough to propel him to the victory. And that could be the case here too for Gregor Kowalski, because he's the one with double Collected Company versus nothing for Nassif.
Yep, and what you're seeing here in this game too is, the Priest of Forgotten Gods is not going to be particularly impactful this game in my estimation, though it did just get a little bit better. Claim the Firstborn was actually a really nice draw step, because now you're able to take the opposing Woe Strider, you're going to be able to sacrifice it to Priest, that's going to generate you some mana, and then that will allow you, to collect a company. So I would say, I don't know if it was the perfect draw step, but it was a pretty darn good one.
Yeah, if you're not going to hit that land for the Collected Company, that's some business right there.
Yes.
Yeah, the sacrifice outlet, of course, is a key piece of the puzzle for these decks. And if you can remove your opponent's ability to sacrifice things, it really does make a lot of these cards look much worse. Look at these Cauldron Familiars, right? There's no sack outlet, there's no food, there's no oven. They're terrible. They're not what you want to be doing at all. If the sacrifice outlet's gone, and it's the same thing with cards even like Mayhem Devil and such. If you can't, purposefully on your own decide when and how you want to start sacrificing things, they get a lot worse.
Yeah, it's interesting. The point I was going to make at the beginning of the turn was that I was surprised not to see the sacrificing of the goat token to Scry to try to guarantee your 4th land. Mm-hmm. And the reason I felt that way was because, Priest doesn't really have anything important to kill on that side of the battlefield when there's Cauldron Familiars and the goat token. And Nassif is not going to sacrifice the Woe Strider, of course. But that claim, the Firstborn, it changed every single thing this turn here for Kowalski. And now I think he's going to be able to press his advantage in a very meaningful way.
Yeah, and having that goat token around is nice. Just gets to sacrifice something of little utility to the Priest and keep his Woe Strider on the battlefield. Yeah, this has ended up working out really well for Kowalski. I anticipated the same thing you did. A lot of times you'll see the sacrificial goat go when a certain card is needed, even if it's just a land off the top for Kowalski. But there is a certain amount of pressure to get these Collected Companies rolling. But he decided to play it more patiently here. And it looks like it's worked out for him pretty well.
Well, let's see what we find with this company, though, because as we do know, it is random. It could be poor. We'll get a good look at it in just a second. And it's, okay, Scavenging Ooze is definitely a hit. Gilded Goose or Blood Artist, those are both fine. Blood Artist may be the better of the two, but we might also say, you know what, I need a little bit of mana, so there's a food token, Ooze in the battlefield. I like that Kowalski is able to redevelop that battlefield, and now Nassif is definitely swimming uphill.
Man. It just worked out so well for Kowalski. He just got everything he wanted. Kill your opponent's board, as it turned out, because of the double block from Cauldron Familiar, which was really interesting there from Nassif. It made Kowalski decide, well, do I actually just want those to go away, or do I want to sacrifice things now to the Priest of the Forgotten Gods?
Which is a legit question.
Yeah. And it ended up being that he said, okay, fine, I do want to make those things go away. So really interesting by Nassif, because then Kowalski actually ended up losing his own Woe Strider to get up to that 4 mana to cast the Collected Company. It did cost Kowalski something significant to do so.
So now, a familiar place here for Nassif, isn't it? What's called the old tank, as it were.
Oh, yeah.
That's trying to figure out exactly how to sequence this turn, because you do have a Mayhem Devil, you do have Scavenging Ooze, you had a Woe Strider that he elected to cast, so he's just trying to think through the turns. If you've ever watched Nassif stream or watched him play over the past, almost 2+ decades at this point, he's a thinking man's Magic player. He's going to try to figure it out, and he's going to take as much time as he's allowed to do so.
Oh, yeah. He spends more time in the tank than a goldfish, that guy. Well, let's see if Kowalski can capitalize on that explosive last turn. Right now, it's just a Woe Strider on the other side of the battlefield. And look at this, Scavenging Ooze hitting the red zone. How big can it get? There's, I guess, up to 3 green mana sources right now.
Yeah, so at least a 5/5. And this is basically a free attack because there are creatures in the graveyard. We know that there's at least 2 Cauldron Familiars and a Woe Strider in the graveyard because we can see that in Nassif's side of the battlefield. Now, the big question is, does Nassif want to, I guess, force it or anything? And the answer is basically no. So now here comes the Collected Company from Kowalski. And now we get to see if things get even better for our Jund Citadel player. And I'd say they do.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, these weren't the dream key hits. He already had a Scavenging News on the battlefield. He hits a second one and a Woe Strider. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because this kind of shows the raw power. It's not even the cards that you would specifically select necessarily, but it's just raw power, right?
Yeah.
You got 5 mana for his 4 mana, 2 different creatures. They're both important and they both affect the matchup.
And what makes Collected Company so powerful, and this is going to sound incredibly obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that more often than not, it's 2 creatures in one, and it's going to be 2 good creatures in one. And this is where Nassif is just behind in this game. One of the ways that Nassif could catch up is a Collected Company of his own, but he doesn't have one. So he's just kind of playing what I would consider to be pretty fair Magic at this point, where Kowalski has had the opportunity, to have some pretty unfair turns back to back. And now you see a much better battlefield here for him, which gives him what I would consider to be a pretty sizable advantage.
Well, here comes one of the big hitters in the deck. It's Mayhem Devil.
Yeah, it's like the only thing. It's like the only thing Kowalski is missing from his side of the battlefield.
Right. It's the only thing we haven't seen yet, but it is, well, it's really the best card in the deck, right? I mean, the way the deck is configured, this is the thing you want to see. Like, how many of these can I draw? This is part of the reason why they play Collected Company, just to find more Mayhem Devils. The question is, what can it do here? There is a sacrifice outlet with the Woe Strider. There isn't a whole heck of a lot going on else, though.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean, this is one of those times where if anything's going to catch Nassif up in this game that's not Collected Company, it's going to have to be Mayhem Devil. And you can see on Kowalski's side, he's thinking about, do I want to do any sacrificing here? Do I want to do any eating of Scavenging Ooze? Like, he's got some options, so it looks like he's going to go to the Ooze right now. There's some things to think about here, not just letting this Mayhem Devil simply resolve.
Yeah, it looks like Kowalski just wanted to get Scavenging Ooze up to a 3/3. Perhaps thinking, well, maybe I could protect it or not open it up to getting just 2 pings. Also, of course, critically taking out creatures from the graveyard of the opposing player. Kowalski's drawn a lot of sideboard cards here, or at least has them on the battlefield. Double Scavenging Ooze plus the Klothys in hand as well.
Yep.
The graveyard not looking like a very safe place to lie here if you're Gabriel Nassif.
Not at this exact moment, no. I mean, Scavenging Ooze plays such a huge role in this matchup. Assuming it goes unanswered and you've got the mana to activate it, it can really just manage everything while also growing and gaining life. Again, pretty obvious stuff, but when you actually see it happen in a game, you can see just how much of an impact it has on a game and in this matchup.
Well, both Scavenging Oozes and a Woe Strider coming in. And Nassif says,
Decisions now. I mean, I can't imagine he wants to do any blocking with that Mayhem Devil. The other stuff, though, the other stuff's important. I mean, there's Ooze on the battlefield, and we're seeing the impact it's having on Kowalski's side. And then Woe Strider is really the sacrifice engine for Nassif right now, alongside Mayhem Devil, though it's not technically, I wouldn't say it's really online yet.
This, by the way, these are the situations that generally you get to see Nassif kind of show his strength as a methodical player, right? This is a very complicated scenario that we're looking at, and it requires going through a lot of different options before coming up with something that looks like the best choice. And while Nassif takes his time, this is why, right? He really is. It's rare that you see him come out of one of these and go, oh yeah, I just missed something and played too fast, or I just was on autopilot. Like that isn't how he plays.
Yeah, it's never been how he plays, and I would be shocked if it ever is how he plays. He's going to think things through, and because in a game like this where he's already up a game in the match, can he come back in this game? It's going to be really, really hard, but you want to think about the ways that you can, and I think he's doing a good job of doing that right now with the blocks that he's tendering, the things that he's trying to do, and maybe he's thinking, what are my outs? And maybe second Mayhem Devil, maybe Collected Company into Perfect. He's thinking about those things right now.
That's right. As it turns out, it's just going to be one little block here. The poor goat is going to jump in front of... They don't last long on these battlefields. It's going to jump in front of the Scavenging Ooze.
No, they do not.
That is going to prompt Kowalski to sacrifice, or excuse me, to activate the other Scavenging Ooze to eat up one of those cats that was in the yard. And in fact, eat up the other one as well. So now the second Scavenging Ooze there for Kowalski is already at 5-5. Oh no, goat on goat crime here.
Yeah, that's tough to watch.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
One goat is sacrificed to create the magical energy needed to kill the other one. You hate to see it.
I mean, it's funny because, well, it's funny for a lot of reasons, but it's funny. It's funny because this is how good Mayhem Devil is. Like, Mayhem Devil is a powerful enough card to say, you know what? I might be able to carry you back into this one. Give me a little bit more help. Stomping Grounds is not that little bit more help that we were looking for.
Yeah, it is crazy. I when I first started seeing the decks that were taking advantage of Mayhem Devil, I would say, oh, this thing's done, right? We're done here. But then it would be like, wait a minute. Oh, no, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, Mayhem Devil drags the player back into the match. That does not look like it's going to be the case here. Things that land off the top, as you mentioned, said really rough here for Nassif. It feels like this was the turn that Nassif needed to draw something like Collected Company or some big bomb to kind of take over, and a land obviously not going to be that here. But yeah, I learned to stop counting out Mayhem Devil, and oh look, there's a Mayhem Devil.
Yeah, and this should push Kowalski's advantage even further now.
Yeah.
It was already a game that I wouldn't say it was hanging in the balance, but it was in favor, and now it is over with, and now we're getting ready for game number 3.
That's right. So back to the sideboards, our players will go. As you see Nassif kind of surveying the scene. You see the Korvold, Fakir's King there. There's a couple of those now at the top end for Nassif. That does represent his most powerful top end big punch card. Oftentimes the game ends before that because of cards like Collected Company and Mayhem Devil. But hey, if you do find yourself with 5 mana and a Korvold, it is a very good place to be in this deck.
I love a good Korvolding, and it's the kind of card that can win the game all by itself. It's I don't want to call it Mayhem Devil-esque, but it definitely has a huge impact on the game when it does land. But now, Nassif's gone. Like we said, the tank, a very familiar space for Nassif. Korvold was in, now it's out. Is it going to come back in? Decisions.
That's right. It really does matter on how he perceives the matchup to go, right? Like, is this the type of thing that his top end can compete with Kowalski's, or is it that Nassif needs to be consistent and put out that primary game plan around Mayhem Devil as consistently and as often as possible?
One thing I also find pretty compelling about Nassif's sideboard here is, what do you want to do with Priest of Forgotten Gods? Because there's spots where it's going to be great, there's spots where it's going to be mediocre. He had a 2-2 split there for a little bit. Now we're on a 4-0 split. Just put the other 2 back into the main deck. So we're seeing kind of him right now just think how, his brain, we're actually watching it function right now with regards to what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? It was Korvold before. Now it's Priest. I think that might change because he's on the play, so he wants all 4. So there are some things to think about here. See, now, okay, so now back. This is great. This is great. Now back to Korvold. How about 2? -1 Priest. Okay.
So -1 Priest plus 2 Korvold currently.
Okay.
All
right, we're down to 60 now, so it looks like some number of Dreadhorde Butchers are coming out. Hey, how about a Bone Crusher Giant back in?
This is funny. It's quite a mix here. And
a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, one of my favorite things about that is just, when you're watching a player of Nassif's caliber, right? He's not, we can't hear him out loud, but, you may think to yourself as a Magic player watching this at home, it's like, well, these guys make it look so easy. It's like, well, they're also kind of like you too, where it's just like, well, I'm not 100% positive what I want here. I can make an argument for Korvold. I can make an argument for anything. So sideboarding, even for the best players in the world, is still very difficult.
Yeah, it is funny because I think that the perception is that they have it all spreadsheeted out and confidently, no, in this matchup, you don't want this and you do want, it's not like that.
No.
There is a lot of, this probably gives me the best chance. I guess I'll go with it going on out there for sure. Way more than you'd think until you actually, get to be in the room with these type of players. And, it's kind of cool because Nassif, very popular streamer, he streams his Yellow Hat, and you get to see him. He talks through all of those decisions, and you get to actually, kind of ride along and get a chance for how confident he is about the decisions that he's going to make. And usually with Nassif, it's not very confident.
Yes.
He kind of tends to say, I don't even know if this is right. I guess I'll just do it. But he's also right a lot of the time.
I think he's more right than I think he's more confident maybe sometimes than he lets on. Maybe a little self-deprecation, as it were.
That could be. His deck turned mono black on him here.
Yeah, interesting. New build.
He's got a woodland cemetery and a swamp to kind of power this thing out. But boy, it's got to be sketchy because, there's a good chance that this hand in itself will not win on its own. And that means that you need to find help. Like, hey, I'd love to see a Mayhem Devil. Well, you can't cast it. So you're going to need multiple cards. And this hand on its own is going to have to carry you to that point. So let's see if he can do it. There's Cauldron Familiar to kick things off as Nassif passes the turn back. How does the hand look for Kowalski here?
Well, I like his hand. Claims they have a high upside. You've got Priest of Forgotten Gods, but we're without black mana. Now, okay, the struggle could be real for both of these players here. And I guess I was going to say we're without black mana, but there is a Gilded Goose, so we had to have black mana. Overgrown Tomb, however, solves that problem beautifully.
Yeah, and I guess I called it. There's the Mayhem Devil for Nassif. No way to cast it just yet. But that was only the first draw step. So, hey, I did say you could just draw runner. You need multiple cards. That can happen too.
Nothing's funner.
Let's find out if it happens. Yeah, you got to like Kowalski's spot here, though, given the information that we know. Because, well, Kowalski can cast his cards. He can just start deploying things. Set up Priest of the Forgotten Gods with Claim the Firstborn, for example, and that's pretty tough to recover from.
Yeah, the tough part is though, how do you sequence this? That's the really, really difficult part, of course, is, right. And this is the second turn of the game, and we're starting to a little rope action here a little bit for Kowalski, which is what land do I want to play? What spell do I want to play? Well, if we've made that decision, it's going to be Priest of Forgotten Gods, and Nassif, the With.
Another Priest of Forgotten Gods. That's not the worst card here. You can activate your priest still. It's a castable creature. It could be worse, etc. But my goodness sakes, we're going to need to see some red mana in the hand here for Nassif. And there we go. A stomping ground for him. That was big. And remember, he does have the 2 black mana floating. So this means Mayhem Devil, yeah?
Well, Mayhem Devil or Ghost Rider. Right?
Yeah, either one.
And both appear to be good. Now, of the other card in hand, of course, Priest of Forgotten Gods. Don't think that's the best of the bunch. But do you expose the Mayhem Devil now, or do you play the Ghost Rider now? I don't know.
Look at the Ghost Rider. Makes sense.
Question's been answered,
right? Because now, if you have a similar board to this, you can play Mayhem Devil and get all the triggers and all that. Yeah, good call said. So there we go. Woe Strider on the battlefield, and that was just in the nick of time. So we got a game here now. Nassif, having found that red mana and having generated the 2 black mana off the priest, is able to play a 3-drop and mitigate the board for Kowalski. That was big.
Very big. Very, very big. And now, this is what I love. So those first 2 games that we've watched, pretty one-sided for both players. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. Both of them kind of were riding the struggle bus at the beginning with some mana difficulties, but it's kind of all coming together now, and each player's got some real decisions to be had here. With Kowalski, it's kind of like, okay, so I want to work myself towards Collected Company. I've got a Bolsa Citadel to play towards in this game now, too. As now here's a copy of Blood Artist. So we're going to see some fireworks back and forth here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we could see a Claim the Firstborn right now if Kowalski wants to go for it. He's going to go for it. He's going to take the Priest of the Forgotten Gods from the other side. He would not be able to leave Nassif with no sack outlet whatsoever either way. So he says, you know what? I'm going to take this Priest. That will kill it effectively. There it goes.
Yep.
Could take Woe Strider in that scenario and have it actually die and get sacrificed and all that stuff. But it looks like Kowalski says, no, the Priest of the Forgotten Gods is the card I'm really worried about here. So I'm going to make sure that isn't on the battlefield by the time that Nassif gets to untap again.
Yeah, and I'm curious because, is it better to target the Priest or is it better to target the Ghost Rider? Obviously, you're not going to target the Goat token, but, which of those 2 creatures do you want to target? And I will say that Kowalski made that play pretty deliberately. It wasn't I'm not sure which one I'm going to do. It was, no, play Blood Artist, play my land on tap, claim that. So he's clearly put a priority on, I do not want Priest of Forgotten Gods on the battlefield anymore.
Right, and that's what we can glean from this, is that Kowalski said under no circumstance can I allow you to have that card, but you can't have a Woe Strider. That's a card I can let you have, because there was upside to taking the Woe Strider there in the form of getting another card and the mana and all that stuff. So it really does show how Kowalski views that battlefield.
Now, Nassif gets the easy part out of the way, and that's one of the things I like to do is, you know what, let's just get the attack out of the way, and now let's figure out what to do afterward. Let's get in the tank after that part. So now he's gonna stretch it out a little bit. And again, this is one of those spots where, do I go to Mayhem Devil now, or do I continue to hold it? Do I go to the second Priest? My opponent just put a priority on getting Priest off the battlefield. So does that mean the second one is good?
Right, it could, and that does look to be the direction that Nassif is going, because the decision is either Mayhem Devil or Witch's Oven plus Priest of Forgotten Gods. Watch, now Nassif's going to be like, pay for Gigantha, you're like, okay, I give up, Nassif, you got me.
Nassif playing 8 turns ahead.
Yeah.
You're getting Gigantha now.
Exactly.
Way too smart.
All right, there it is. Priest of the Forgotten Gods plus Witch's Oven, go, but nothing else to do this turn. Just pass it back. And one of the things I want to bring up here as well, Cedric, is there's been a lot of fireworks on the battlefield, but if I look at Kowalski's scenario, he's actually getting quite close to being able to cast Bolas's Citadel, right? The mana from Priest of Forgotten Gods, maybe the mana from the Gilded Goose next turn, and we could see Citadel up, which is why it's so important that Nassif is attacking Gregor's life total. He's got him down to 11 here with that last hit with the Woe Strider, and he's going to know that that's an important piece of the puzzle, because the higher the life total they have, if they do resolve Citadel, the worse it is for you.
Okay.
Wow,
so,
did you see that look from Nassif?
Yeah. So we're going after Priest again, as opposed to the Woe Strider. So again, this lines up, right? Like if you went after Priest the first time, I don't think enough has changed in the turn that's taking place for you to go after Woe Strider this time. So it's consistent. Kowalski has basically, again, said that I do not want you to have an active Priest in this game. Absolutely not.
Right. Kowalski is using Claim the Firstborn as a removal spell, forcing Nassif to sacrifice it to one of his sacrifice outlets here, and it looks like it's going to be Witch's Oven. A little bit of a life bump here for Gregor's Kowalski, and a little bit down for Nassif. Up to 12 goes Gregor. And we're going to see that Gilded Goose. So this is where things are going to get very, very interesting next turn, because we absolutely could see some big fireworks, minimal a collected company, but Bolas's Citadel's on the table as well.
Well, it's time to get this thing on the battlefield now. This is the best you can do. And Nassif has done, I think, a really, really, really nice job of sandbagging these Mayhem Devils. Things didn't get too bad for him on the other side of the battlefield. And as I mentioned earlier, you and I have watched Mayhem Devil demolish battlefields all weekend long, and I think it's about to do that once again.
Agreed. Now all of a sudden Gregor Kowalski's game plan of just setting up this mana that he needed for either a company or a Citadel is going to absolutely fall apart on him here. Yeah, this is bad news for Gregor's Kowalski. And remember, I'll remind you that coming into the round, these players actually had a different record than each other. Kowalski only 2 losses on the day, where Nassif has 3.
Yep.
So this is huge if Nassif can win this match and keep his top 8 hopes going. The 4th loss for Nassif, I don't know if it knocks you completely out. We haven't quite figured that out yet. We'll know more next round, but it certainly puts you in a precarious position for top 8, where it feels like if Kowalski picks up a win and can go into the last round with just 2 losses, he would be in great position for top 8. So it is a big swing that's happening on the battlefield here, as you see the board start to disappear here for Kowalski, down to just the Priest now.
Here comes Woe Strider. You mentioned down to just the Priest, and there is a Cauldron Familiar in the graveyard, and an active Witch's Oven on the battlefield. So if Nassif wants to get rid of this Priest right now, he can.
He's thinking about whether he actually needs to do it immediately or not, and it looks like he's deciding, yeah, I think I will. Wow. Hey, you predicted it, Cedric, but that, sandbagging the Mayhem Devil, and now getting it on the battlefield has been a disaster for Kowalski. And Nassif, we have to give him credit here. He waited. He was patient. There was never really a great window for it. Once he found it, he pounced. And look at the board now. Completely gone for Kowalski.
So now the question is, as Kowalski's battlefield is absolutely destroyed, as you mentioned, well, we got Collected Company mana, but what is the best thing to hit? I don't even know. I
don't know either. I suppose Woe Strider plus Mayhem Devil, something along those lines, where you kind of get two pieces at once, a sacrifice outlet plus a way to maybe do something. But Kowalski is desperate now. And this is game 3 between these two players late in day 2. Really a ton on the line for top 8 implications, particularly for Gabriel Nassif. But Kowalski could be on the verge of a victory if he can hit something amazing off of Company. But boy, with double Mayhem Devil on the other side of the battlefield plus Cat Oven, it feels like it's going to be very difficult for him to win at this point.
Yeah, it really, really does. I mean, the engine is very much online for Nassif, and I don't think there's a single card from a Collected Company that can break it up on its own. It's going to have to be perfect, and I don't know what perfect is, but we see the options.
It's Woe Strider plus something plus Priest, it looks like, and that I don't think is even close to enough here.
No, I'm with you. I don't think it's close to enough either.
Or it is Blood Artist plus Woe Strider rather than Priest, but Blood Artist is going to be not long for this world. And I think Nassif can start to breathe a little bit of relief here. He does need to work his way through these last few turns.
I've got confidence. Double? I've got confidence that Yellow Hat can figure out how to do that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do. Again, it's one of his strengths as a Magic player. He treats the early games, the early part of the game, the same way. He's methodical. He has a method that he uses where he is very dryly logical and says, what's the upside? What's the downside? What are the risks that I'm taking here? And he applies those equally. Even in a high pressure situation like this, it's the same type of thought process as it would be earlier in the game. And he has so much practice at that I'm the same as you, Cedric. I just don't see him screwing any of this stuff up. And as you can see, he just gets to completely wipe the board here once again and put himself in a fantastic position to knock off a player with a better record, bring them both to 10-3, and see if he can't try to finish the job next round and maybe make it into the top 8 here.
Dude, the power of Mayhem Devil.
Unbelievable. He waited, and now he's got 2 of them on the battlefield, and Kowalski has now back-to-back turns, had creatures, and by the time it's his turn again, he will have no board.
Now remember, Mayhem Devil doesn't do it on its own. Needs some friends to get it done, but when its friends are here, be it Cat Oven or Woe Strider and a couple of extra bodies and Goat Slaying around, it's easy mode. And right now, I mean, 1 Mayhem Devil may have been enough, but 2 solidifies it, and Nassif's going to move on. Lethal. Yeah, he's going to move on to 10-3 now, Marsh.
Yeah, really impressive stuff for Gabriel Nassif. He had to work his way through one of the tougher matchups that we have, right? Jund, Sacrifice, Mirror, even if they're slightly different builds,